Jeff Bezos was walking down the street and he gave a fiver to a homeless
That it's
person.
not that. Oh my god.
Don't you want to pat him on the back?
Oh my. So Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball had a lively debate with Brianna Joy Gray over the idea of voting for the Green Party versus voting for the Democratic candidate in a general election. And do I have some clips for you? So I had a hell of a time breaking this down. This is almost a 2 hour debate. Uh, I got like 7 clips here. I will link to the full discussion below. It's on Kyle and Crystal's Substack, but they have a big chunk of it on Secular Talk as well. So I'll link to that below. But I I got some comments to make, and I really after the second clip, I'm gonna get to some facts that I really have not seen addressed by anybody else. This has to do with one of the Green Party's main goals, so I think it's really important to lay some of that information out. But before I get to the first clip here, I just want to quickly go over each person's position in this debate so it's clear when you're watching this where everybody stands. Kyle is in New York. He's voting for Marianne Williamson in the Democratic primary. Because he's in New York, it sounds like he's voting for Cornel West in the general because New York is a safe state. It's going to go Democrat anyways. But he says if he was in a swing state, he would vote for Joe Biden. Crystal is in Virginia, is voting for Joe Biden, voted for him in 2020 as well. And, agrees with Kyle on a lot of the main points, but also cites the massively beneficial changes under the National Labor Relations Board that has strengthened unions under Joe Biden, which has been, I think, one of the more surprising aspects of the Joe Biden presidency. And Brianna Joy Gray is, I believe, still in New York, is voting for Cornel West and is advocating support for the Green Party nationally, but does admit that it's more difficult or that it's a more difficult choice to vote for the Green Party in a swing state. That said, she does heavily support the Green Party and is pushing that. So let me get to the first clip here where Brianna is discussing why she thinks voting for the Democratic candidate has a negative effect.
Let's say Trump is an existential threat. Let's say that he's a unique threat among all Republican candidates. My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as you, Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme.
All right, so one of the big arguments from Green Party voters and Brianna Joy Gray here is that if you keep voting for the Democratic Party, then it sends a message to the party that everything is fine. We're going to keep voting for you regardless of how far right you go. Here's the issue. Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. They even went on to blame Jill Stein voters, Green Party voters for that. Did they then think, hey, maybe we should try and appeal to more of these, further left voters, these working class voters in 2020? No. They pushed Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders. Lessons were not learned because the Democratic Party is not going to learn lessons. It's a capitalist party in terms of how it's currently controlled, what leadership is. So there is no trying to appeal. What really ended up happening is that the bar was lowered for what is acceptable for a Democratic Party candidate to the point where Joe Biden became an acceptable candidate. Joe Biden would not have won in 2016. So you have a bar that was lowered. And let's be fair, Biden, I think, far exceeded, we're going to get to some of that in a bit, far exceeded what people expected of him as president. But as a candidate, on paper, I think you could argue Biden, before he won in 2020, is a more conservative candidate than Hillary Clinton was. So it just lowered the bar to what is acceptable to the point where people just wanted anybody who could defeat Trump. So I don't think, punishing the party did anything. It made things worse. There is no example of the party being taught a lesson by left-wing voters and then changing to appeal to those voters. The only real way to do that is through, I think, labor power, is having some actual, organized power over the party in some way to push them in that direction. And another way, is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders running against Biden in the primary. And because of the level of support he had, he was able to get some promises from Joe Biden that I don't think Biden would have made without that. And he actually delivered on some of those promises that we'll get to in a bit with a future clip from Kyle. So I just don't, this argument to me doesn't make any sense considering we already saw the example of Hillary losing and the Democratic Party not moving further to the left. Let me get to, and not to mention, just quickly here, since I wrote this down, this is really worth mentioning, the rise in hate crimes under Donald Trump. You have activists now fighting for, Instead of fighting for, Medicare for all, for example, they're fighting for abortion rights that were taken away because of Trump's Supreme Court picks. Like, think of how much further back things have gone. It's reversed progress decades because Trump won. So I just don't understand this argument at all, because we see the results of Trump winning and how much it's turned things backwards. Let me get to the next clip now, where this is another argument you hear a lot is the federal matching funds. So if the Green Party hits 5% in the popular vote, they will get federal matching funds for the next election, which can make them a more viable party. I will get to discussing a bit of that after this clip.
The structural barriers against running as a third party, as rigged as it is by the DNC against outsider Democrats, which it definitely is, it's even more rigged against third parties, which is why they always get like 3% of the vote.
Which is literally why
Bernie got 43% of the vote.
Which is literally why people feel it is a structural advantage to get someone like Cornel West to 5% of the vote so they can get federal matching funds.
All right. So this is one of the big arguments, and on the surface sounds very convincing. If you get the Green Party to 5% of the popular vote in a general election, they hit the threshold for getting federal matching funds, which would allow them, this is the argument, allow them to better compete in the next election. Here's the problem. There is one example of this happening. The Reform Party in 96 under Ross Perot hit 8% of the vote, meaning in 2000, Pat Buchanan, who eventually there was a fight within the Reform Party about who was the actual leader of the Reform Party, Pat Buchanan won that fight, got the federal matching funds amounting to about $12 million back in 2000. He used that to campaign, used it on ads, all that stuff. And what was the result? Did he grow the support for the Reform Party from 8%? Not exactly. Pat Buchanan and the Reform Party, 0.43%. Getting federal matching funds does not guarantee you will continue getting federal matching funds. The Reform Party has, dissipated. That you have to keep that up. People have this idea that, oh, you vote, they'll hit 5% this time, the Greens will, and then next time they'll get 6, next time they'll get 8, next time they'll get 15. No, there's no guarantee for growth. This is not the solution to the problem. It sounds great on paper, grow the support, get federal matching funds, but as far as, this is one example. You could argue, well, it's, this one example doesn't mean they're all going to fail, but there is no the issue with the Green Party, there is no structure to it. There are no local races. There are no state races. Like, if there was if we saw building blocks where the party focused on, let's say like one House seat, got that person in, then you could argue, well, look, they're building the blocks to form a party that could really compete. But it's just every 4 years, oh yeah, the Green Party candidate. You have to actually build support in states, build support locally. You have to that's how you're going to be able to, if you're going to get federal matching funds, be able to keep that and continue growing it. Without that foundation, this is all just window dressing. So this argument to me, while it used to make sense when I didn't know as much about the history of the Reform Party and what federal matching funds actually amount to, when you look into it a little more, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And also, we're talking about roughly $10 million is what the Libertarian Party would have got in 2016 if they hit 5%. So the number actually went down because less people are checking the box on their tax return to say, yes, give $3 to this big pool of money that goes to public funding of elections. So because there's less support for that, the money is not, in that pool is not growing either. So it went from 12 million in 2000 to 10 million in 2016. And roughly 10 million against the Democratic Party and the Republican Party doesn't mean a whole lot. The focus has to be on, local, has to be on really building out the party, because if you don't have that, you don't have much to work with. Let me get to the
I expected nothing of him, Brianna. I expected this is the guy who brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he does all these things which shock me. He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us from Biden. $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. Those are definitely good things. Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. A George Floyd executive order to create a registry of abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52% maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water, and all I care about is the policy. And when we have all these policies, I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You'd have corporations paying nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already set your expectations on the ground, and it seems like he's surpassed your expectations. He has not surpassed mine. I don't know what you want me to say.
But he's not better than what you thought?
No,
that's
he's not better than what I thought he would.
Really?
No.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Of course he surpassed your expectations. He surpassed everybody's expectations. What Kyle lays out there, like, to me, truly showcases how terrible the Democratic Party is at marketing themselves. The fact that the Democratic Party under Biden has gotten all of this done, and that I forgot that half that even existed, like, and I cover politics. It really shows you how terrible the party is at running on and just, advocating for the stuff they've actually done. Kyle makes a great argument. And, even if this stuff didn't get done, I view voting as a tool. I view it as how to best use your tool. And if that means you're voting against somebody as opposed to voting for somebody, then that's what you have to do. That's my view on voting. I'm not telling you to vote that way, but that's how I view voting. It's simply one of the few tools you have in a democracy. But you also have, like, you could argue maybe this time you actually are voting for Biden as opposed to voting simply against Trump or against the Republican candidate because of all the things that have gotten done. Not to mention, Kyle, I think, touched on a bit of it there, and Crystal does a little more on the National Labor Relations Board. And and again, you could say, well, that's not Biden. Sure, but it's the people that have been hired under him to do this stuff. The amount of support that unions have had over the past few years because of the NLRB is incredible. And it's helped to lead to a lot of the victories we have seen with unions. Not to mention now, I think I played this clip. I'm going to play this clip. Or I may not. I don't know. But Crystal mentions during the debate,
they just issued a ruling which could be a complete game changer for unions. And just to explain to people a little bit, basically in